Voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
Look up on the wall, there on the floor, under the pillow.
Oh, it's a fabulous Friday. History of the NBA last night. Landon Schmidt, did you watch any of that beatdown? The New York Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks in Atlanta? I'd never seen anything like that.
I haven't either. I was shocked when I first looked at the game because I was hosting trivia last night, and I looked up and it was like 45-15. I was like, I'm surely not seeing this right.
No, that's exactly what the score was. They actually led like 11-8, and then the game was over. This is an elimination game in your own ballpark. The 47-point halftime score was the biggest deficit in the history of the NBA playoffs. They lose by 51 in a game they had to win at home to at least get a Game 7. Unbelievable stuff. Tomorrow, the Kentucky Derby. We continue a tradition here. Our Derby show in about 7.5 minutes with Paul Rogers from Louisville. He's picked the Derby for us for many, many years. It's the 152nd running. There is a 4-1 favorite. And that horse is called Renegade, but I'll give you a little insight that I learned. Out of that number one post, in the last, I believe it's 67 years, there's only been one winner, and that was almost 30 years ago. So, we'll see what our good friend Paul Rogers has to say about that. And the Tigers get their scorer. So, the U of M gets Tylik Weeks. He is a 6'7" scorer from Southern Miss. He led the Sun Belt in scoring with almost 20 points a game, 19.7. He had 4 games over 30. There are some that will say, because he's 6'7", he's a lot like David Jones was. I hope he plays better defense than David Jones. But David Jones could clearly score. And the Tigers get him over Ole Miss, Baylor, TCU, South Carolina, UCLA, and UCF. Now, I have no idea what the NIL bids were to get this guy. I'm going to assume he's going to be one of the higher paid players on the Tigers team. But the Tigers have these pieces coming together. Now they need a big. There's 2 bigs that I think are within Memphis's budget and really make these pieces fit because they don't necessarily need scoring with all the wings. And now this kid, and they got their point guard in Reed, maybe their backup point guard in Holloway. That'll be an interesting battle. They got to have rebounders. And that's exactly what Williams, the kid from North Alabama, is. Over 9.5 rebounds a game. I think he might have been their top rebounder in their conference. And this big kid who was in town last night, Matt Imbole. He's from a junior college, South Georgia Tech or something like that. He's supposed to be the number 8 junior college prospect. And he averages 12 rebounds a game. So that's 21 rebounds right there. I don't know if that carries over. But the point is, those 2 guys, that would be 14 pieces that you would have with everybody. And you'd have pieces that fit. As I've made this point over and over again now, you have to have stars and role players. And Memphis with Pennies had that in the past. DeAndre Williams, KD, and role players. Alo was a perfect role player. Didn't care about scoring, just wanted to make sure everybody got involved. I think Reed can do that. I think Reed could do that a little bit more. Any way you look at it here, this team was constructed differently than last year by far. This has thought. It has fit involved. And if they get the bigs, because they don't have them yet, but if they get those 2 bigs, that's 14 pieces. Maybe he keeps one open. He usually does, so that he can make a move midway. But that would be 14 really good, what you would think fit pieces. So I am a lot more excited about this roster construction than I was a year ago. Did you see, Landon Schmidt, any of the Denver game last night?
I did indeed. Very upset.
You're upset?
I mean, I'm not shocked, but I am upset because my boy Jonas is not going to get a ring.
Here's the thing. This Denver team had things going, and I don't know if it's Jokic who did this. Nikolai Jokic, by the way, I got to tell you his money. Nikolai Jokic, after this year, because he was asked last night in the defeat if he still wanted to be a Nugget, is he's got 2 years left, one that's set, and then the second one is his option. He can take it or leave it. And he gets $122 million. Think about that, $61 million a year. $122 million. Wait a second. Then over this summer, if they choose, the Nuggets could offer him a 4-year extension. That extension would be worth $293 million. In essence, Jokic, if he pulls the trigger, no wonder. I would love to be living in Denver. I would love to be a Denver Nugget for life for this. 6 years, over the next 6 years, he would make $415 million. $415 million. That is bizarro. But that's what's happening. And they lose last night, and he said they were miles away from being competitive. So here's one of the other issues I have with Denver, and I don't know if this was Jokic. Michael Malone was the guy that led them to the championship, who's now in North Carolina. I'm not sure they made a smart move by dumping him because they haven't been close to championship form since Malone was let go. One last thing, and I think it's interesting, and maybe I'll get into this with Ted Butler on Monday. Brandel Chamblee, I know a lot of people don't like Brandel Chamblee at all. I think he's really smart, is the best at using statistics, even better than Johnny Miller. He's certainly not as good an analyst in the booth as Johnny Miller, but he's the best studio guy. He said this yesterday on Golf Central. I just happened to tune in at the right moment. This was involving the finality of the public investment fund, the PIF people in Saudi Arabia saying we're cutting it off after this year. And he made this comment. He said, you know, at first the PGA was going to do business with them, and then they found this hedge fund in the Northeast, and they've been using their money. He said, if you look at all of the money that is in these signature events and all the money that comes from majors, all this guaranteed money the players are getting in from the equity fund, he said, I look at the TV ratings. Yeah, the majors are pretty good. And I look at sponsorships. And I may not be as smart as a lot of these guys, but it does not seem to me to be sustainable as a financial model. In other words, you have purses, $20 million this week. Cadillac is your sponsor. How much are they putting up? Are they rating some of those funds that they took from the hedge funds? He said, I'm really interested in waiting and see, but I don't know that you can sustain these kinds of purses and money in the long run and still be an entity with a return on investment for your people, for your partners. Players, yes. Partners, questionable. First guy questioned the way this new business model of the PGA is going. As I sit here, and we mentioned Cadillac, they're the investors in this week in the signature event at Doral. They're going to bring you our friend Paul Rogers today. For one more time, we get the man with the plan for the 152nd running of the Roses. You know, you go there, you're seeing the best. You go to Landers Cadillac of Memphis, you're seeing the best. If you have not been to that East Memphis Poplar site, you know they redid that showroom. You'll be amazed. Get in there, talk with them. You know you're going to get the best in trade-ins. You know if you go to Easy Pass at landersmemphis.com, you get even more opportunity just to get the best bang for your dollar. It's Cadillac, but it's Landers Cadillac of Memphis. That makes it even more special. And remember, if it doesn't say Landers, you paid way too much. We head on over to talk to Paul Rogers. Good morning, my friend. We do this every year. This time it's the 152nd running of the race in Louisville, Kentucky. How is the health of horse racing? I ask you this every year, but we've seen trends where it's down. There's certainly always interest in the Triple Crowns. Where are we at these days with horse racing? Good morning.
Morning, Dave. Good to be with you again. That's a good question. It unquestionably is not a healthy sport nationwide. It is healthy in certain pockets. Certainly it's very strong in Kentucky, the Derby being the premier event there. It's pretty strong up in New York still, particularly the summer meet at Saratoga. I'm actually doing something different this year. I had some friends and we decided to kind of leave the chaos of Derby week, and I'm in Hot Springs, Arkansas, where Oaklawn Park is located. Yeah. And this area has some very successful racing. In fact, they've expanded their racing days. They used to stop racing about a month ago, and now they've continued racing through Derby. And Saturday will be their final day of racing, and they draw huge crowds here. They had over 70,000 for the Arkansas Derby.
Wow.
So you have pockets, but it's certainly not the sport it was in its glory days. And frankly, the purses, where they are really strong, are supported mainly by gaming as opposed to the actual sport itself.
Right.
Oaklawn Park, for example, has a fantastic casino here, but the casino money is what funds their purses. But you'll still find places and people who are totally into the sport and really enjoy it, and I include myself among those.
Well, I think even the casual guy like me, who, I grew up in Chicago. I did go to some horse racing, but for me, it's really simple. I just care really about the three big races. We start with the Derby, then we've got the Preakness, and then we have the Belmont in New York. Preakness has moved around a couple of times as they build that track in Maryland back up. But one thing we haven't had in a couple of years is a Triple Crown winner. Have we got a Triple Crown threat out of this 20-horse field this year?
My initial answer to that would be no, but you never know for sure. But certainly when American Pharoah came along, you knew he had the makings of being a pretty special horse. Justify was a bit more surprising. He had very little experience coming into the Derby and came on and won the Triple Crown. I don't see anybody in this race. I haven't heard people talking about anybody in this race that is a budding Triple Crown star, but it could happen. A horse can get good right at this time in their career. And we'll just have to wait and see. But my sort of safe answer, I guess, based on percentages, would be no, I don't think we're looking at a Triple Crown winner here.
There was a horse a couple of years ago that I remember won the first two legs, and everybody thought this was the best super horse in years and clearly was going to win it and didn't. Do you remember who I'm talking about?
I actually do not.
Okay.
I can remember a number in past where that was the case. There was a bunch of, but during that long 33-year Triple Crown drought, we had quite a few, I don't know the exact number of horses, who did win the first two. And I'd go to the Belmont Stakes. I covered all three Triple Crown races in those years, and everybody's all fired up. It's going to happen this year, and it would always disappoint. But I can't recall a most recent one. Like most people our age, I'm better at remembering things 30 years ago than 5 years ago.
I'm with you. I would say this was within the, after there was a Triple Crown winner, this horse was pretty well thought of to, even before the Triple Crown started, had a great shot at it and won the first two convincingly, but lost the third one, I think, to a horse that skipped the Preakness and came back and got him. As you look at it, there is a favorite. He's 4-1. Just to show you the extent of my research for these conversations with you, I learned that at Churchill Downs, in this race, the number one post has only delivered one winner in the last 67 years, and it was almost 30 years ago that position actually won a race. This time, the favorite Renegade is running from that spot. Is that a jinx spot, or will there be a winner?
And by the way, the last winner you're talking about, I think, was Ferdinand in 1986. Am I right?
That could be right. I didn't write it down.
I think that's it. I didn't realize there had been only one in that long a time, but it could be. I have never been a strong believer in post positions being good or bad. You have post positions generally you would prefer, of course, but many times you've seen what like people want to be like 7, 8, or 9. Well, you get the start of the race and you're the 8 horse, and the 7 horse stumbles into your path, and all of a sudden you're wiped out, and it hurts you. But generally, yeah, you don't like to be right there on the rail. But in this case, I'm not overly concerned. He is the favorite, but a mild favorite at 4-1, and I think his odds may even go up because people, including his trainer, admitted he's not thrilled about the number 1 post. But in his case, here's where the number 1 post can hurt you. If you're a confirmed front runner and you take just the briefest bobble or get away slightly late, all of a sudden everybody outside of you caves in, and suddenly you're sitting in 10th, 11th, 12th place. Renegade is not that type of horse. He's a come-from-behind horse. He doesn't have to jump out of the gate right away and be on the lead. He can be more relaxed, let a few horses go on, settle into a spot, and go from there. So I'm not overly concerned in his case about the number 1 post. But if you believe his statistics, it is something he'll have to overcome.
There are 2 at 6-1. In the 6th spot is Commandment, and then at post 17, it's Further Ado. I heard a guy from Louisville Courier Journal on the show before me yesterday say he thought Further Ado would be the 1 horse in this field that he thought could win the Triple Crown. But 17, by the way, I'm not sure he's running out of that spot, but that's been a jinx spot too. But what about those 2, Commandment, Further Ado? Any potential there?
Further Ado actually drew 18, but because of the scratch of Silent Tactic, who was number 13, everybody moves in 1. In fact, there are 2 scratches, a Silent Tactic and Full Effort number 20. So 2 of the first 2 also eligibles are now in the race. But as for Further Ado, yeah, I mean, he won the Bluegrass Stakes by 11 lengths. It was very impressive. John Velasquez, a veteran jockey, has won, 2 or 3 derbies? I know Brad Cox, Louisville native, one of the leading trainers in the country. He did win a derby, but he won it by disqualification after he had Mandaloon, who won. What was it? 6 months later, when they disqualified Baffert's horse, whose name suddenly escapes me. So he said yes, he has officially won a derby, but he's never experienced the thrill of seeing his horse finish first in the derby. But he grew up like a block from Churchill Downs. Very successful, and his horse has been very good. He's won 3 of the 6, including, as I said, that 11-length romp in the Bluegrass. He won the Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill Downs, which is a primary 2-year-old prep race back in November. He won that race, so he's won on the track. Distance doesn't seem to be a problem. So he's legit. And as for Commandment, that's sort of the same deal. Trained by also Brad Cox, by the way, which is interesting there. And he, his first race was at Keeneland, and he finished 4th, and he's since reeled off 5 straight wins. One of those was at Churchill when he broke his maiden in November. His most recent race was a very narrow win in the Florida Derby. He also won the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream Park. And he has a style that you like for this race. He's a kind of a stalker, you would call, or mid-pack at worst, sort of a style that seems to fit. And by the way, this year's race is interesting in the standpoint that it does have sort of an even mix of speed, stalkers, you would call, and closers. And usually you get a pretty honest pace that way without somebody going off and stealing it by themselves or a bunch of horses burning themselves up trying to get the lead up front. So it's a pretty well-balanced field from a strategic standpoint. And Commandment certainly fits in there. And Further Ado does too, to some degree, but those are the 2 that I think would have a legitimate chance.
Chief Wallaby, 8-1. He's next in line there. He's coming out of the 12 spot.
Yeah, and Bill Mott's his trainer. Mott has won 2 derbies now, including last year. He's only raced 3 times, and he has talked about how he would prefer a horse with a little more experience than that. But that's the case. He's only been out 3 times. Won his first race, was narrowly beaten his second in the Fountain of Youth, and then was a close third in the Florida Derby. He's at a post 12. Junior Alvarado rides for Belmont regularly, and he'd be in a good spot there.
Is there a long shot you like?
There is, actually. In fact, there's a couple.
Love it.
Bob Baffert has a 20-1 horse, and I think you say Potentes, number 14. One of his 3 races have been at Santa Anita. He was narrowly beaten by So Happy, who was in this field in the Santa Anita Derby, his most recent race. I say narrowly. It was two and a half lengths. Won the San Felipe before that. He's a son of Into Mischief, which is one of the top sires in the country, and you got Baffert there, so that's one. And another one I kind of like. Who was it that I was looking at? There was a big price. I think it was a Pavlovian, maybe. I'm not wild about it.
Yeah, that's a 30-1 shot. Yeah.
Yeah. But he comes from second in the Louisiana Derby, which has not traditionally been a real strong Derby prep. His race had been in Louisiana. He did race in California some early in his career, but he's trained by Doug O'Neill, who's won. Has he won 2 Derbies? I know he's won 1, maybe 2. So he would be a long shot that I'm kind of interested in.
All right, let's, like we always do, let's go over how this race is going to break down and finish.
Well, I think the speed horses you're going to look at to kind of see where they can go early is Albus, number 2. He's 30-1, but even though his last race, actually he won the Wood Memorial by coming from pretty far back, but generally he's a horse who likes to be up close to the front. So does Litmus Test. He's number 4. He's generally one that's going to press the pace. So Happy, maybe he's the Santa Anita Derby winner. He wants to be close. And then you kind of got those that would be what you might call sort of the stalkers, the in-between horses. And that would be, I think, Renegade, actually, as I mentioned, is one of the closers.
Right.
Along with Right to Party. He was second in the Wood Memorial. They're among those that I think would be, kind of laying back off the pace. But I just in my guess, which has been traditionally pretty inaccurate for this race, there's so many horses, so many variables. But I would look for Renegade to get a good trip out of the one hole. If he can get off to a good start, I think he'll be fine. I would look for him to close strong and pick up the win. I'm actually going to throw in some long shots behind that. Chief Wallaby, who I mentioned, along with Potente, who I also mentioned, and even Pavlovia I'm going to throw in there. I think they're just long shot threats. You never know what's going to happen in this race. We've certainly seen crazy things happen in the past, and we went through a long stretch where the favorites didn't win. Then they won for a while, and now it's kind of going back the other way to longer price horses. So it's I don't think there's any real trend you can say this is the way it goes. It's just sort of the randomness of the Derby.
Well, the early morning line is 30-1 on Pavlovian. So if you feel really good about that, you might make some money, especially putting them in some kind of a box. Last thing, Tigers are loading up. They're getting ready for you. Memphis gets Louisville at FedEx Forum this year.
Yeah.
But you guys are loading up too. Hey, you guys have done a pretty good job of getting some talent the last couple of years. That NIL budget's pretty good.
It is, and to be honest with you, David, I sure don't know where it's coming from.
You're not putting it up, Paul?
No, it's not coming out of my pocket, and I'm not getting any of the benefits from it either. But they have loaded up this year. I think in some rankings they have the number 1 transfer class, maybe the number 1 player, and Floyd Badunga from Kansas. They're spending the money and they're getting the talent. And Pat Kelsey's first 2 years have been certainly successful. Considering what had happened right before he got here. His first year was just overwhelmingly successful. They made the tournament, but did not win the first round. Last year, this past season actually turned out to be a little bit disappointing. They did win a tournament game and got beaten in the second round by Michigan State, but they had this factor of Michael Brown, who was probably their best player, going through a little bit what Peterson was going through at Kansas with an injury that was sometimes somewhat puzzling. And in the end, he ended up playing not even 2/3 of the season, missed the last part of the season. Louisville just never could really get the team together that they thought they were going to have with him. So, in a sense, it was a little bit disappointing. But still, overall, after those really rough stretches for Louisville, they've had 2 tournament tournament years and looking for a little bit better, hopefully, this year.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see you guys in FedEx Forum. By the way, enjoy Oak Lawn and Hot Springs. I love visiting there. And if you do go to play golf in Hot Springs Village, Diamante is the one you want to go to. That's the beautiful, beautiful golf course.
I would love to give it a try, but we decided to leave the clubs at home just to, to please. It's complicated when you try to play golf with the lives are long and you're going to the races and you're trying to fit everything in, so we decided to keep it simple.
I understand that.
I ran into, actually, we went out to dinner last night, ran into a group of 18 who had come here for golf over the weekend and were having a big time.
18. What a trip that would be.
I would never want to put that together.
No, not me either. But I'd love to play in it, but I wouldn't want to put it together.
Invite me, but don't ask me to be in charge.
There you go. Paul Rogers, voice of Louisville. He's our guy on the Derby, and sometimes the Preakness and the Belmont will try to get in touch with you in a couple of weeks.
All right. See you, Dave.
Thank you. Paul Rogers, our man on the Triple Crown. He's brought to you by Southern Security. 7 locations, not for profit. That means they can do things others can't. So you might be a small business owner, or you might be buying your first home. Southern Security's right here to be your trusted financial partner. They've been doing it over 75 years. They do it with the best rates because they can do things other banks can't, not for profit. They've got the best service and the newest technology. You ought to look at that branch they've got in Collierville. It's been voted the best credit union in the Mid-South for the last 6 years. They're proud supporters of the Tigers. Southern Securities, your home team credit union, federally insured by NCUA. We take a break. When we come back, we're going to Chicago. Andy Schiffman, our agent on the NBA. He comes your way next.
Sports 56 and 98.5 FM. Available locally on your radio dial as well as around the world online at sports56whbq.com. Take us with you everywhere by downloading the Sports 56 app. And at home, just say, Alexa, play Sports 56. Wherever you are, it's easy to stay tuned to Sports 56 and 98.5 FM.
Unlock your new go-to spot, Codes Dispensary in Steele, Missouri, just over an hour from Memphis. When you're ready for a legal, reliable option, they're right up the road. Explore the full menu of top-shelf products in-store and online. Short on time? Order ahead and cruise through the drive-thru for a quick pickup. Stack rewards while you stock up with Club Codes. Earn points for every dollar spent. Codes Dispensary, now open in Steele, Missouri. Supreme cannabis that's worth the drive. Learn more at codesdispensary.com. That's codesdispensary.com. Men, if you're tired of relying on pills and want lasting, natural performance in the bedroom, Bluff City Health and Wellness offers Apex RF. Backed by clinical research, this discreet 15-minute, non-surgical treatment boosts blood flow, sensitivity, and confidence. No pills, no needles, no side effects. Appointments are filling fast. Call Bluff City Health and Wellness today at 901-800-7606 or take the ED quiz at bchwonline.com. Bluff City Health and Wellness, your confidence in the bedroom naturally.
Give your business the edge it deserves with an end-to-end AI solution built for trades. Look, in this business, you're either growing or you're left behind. The companies winning right now, they're not guessing, they're using data, automation, and systems that actually scale. Service Titan's AI connects and automates your workflow so you can focus on growing revenue and running smarter and staying ahead of your competition. Stop operating, start automating. Service Titan, AI for the trades. Visit servicetitan.ai.
Chris Price here with Metro Builders. In the wake of recent storms in the Mid-South, we saw severe damage, and our prayers go out to all those impacted. Believe it or not, much of this damage has still not been discovered. Most of us do not look up and take notice to displaced shingles, small water stains on our ceilings, and many of the silent ways water attacks our homes. This type of silent damage is unsightly, and if left for a period of time, become unhealthy to you and your family. At Metro Builders, our team of Hague-certified technicians and fully trained estimators are ready to come out, evaluate any concerns you may have, from climbing your roof and evaluating your shingles or TPO to opening a wall or ceiling for further inspection. We get paid to look up and climb. If you have an insurance claim that requires restoration or need a contractor that accepts all insurance carrier scopes, Metro Builders understands the way to restore a home or office either back to its pre-existing condition or upgrading that space. Call me. 901-375-1717. That's 901-375-1717 or metrobuildersmemphis.com.
Hey, you ready to bang? Bangers Pickleball in South Haven is now open with 10 courts, a restaurant, and 3 bars. New to pickleball? No problem. Take a free Bangers 101 class to learn. Bangers offers a great time for everyone, and there's no membership required. Bangers even has events for you non-pickleballers like mahjong, trivia, whiskey, and wine tasting. Bangers Pickleball has it all. All the rage, all the fun, all for you. Please dink responsibly at Bangers Pickleball, 6787 Snowden Lane, South Haven, Mississippi. Let's bang.
Now back to Wolo and Friends on Sports 56. Here once again is the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
We are about to move the Family Leisure Studios from right here to Chicago. Our friend Andy Schiffman, our agent from Priority Sports, is standing by. But you can go to Family Leisure, I-40 and Wooden Road, for the Hot Tub and Swim Spa Expo. Now, we're not calling it that. Going on through May 10th, we're calling it the Battle of the Brands, because 7 manufacturers are all fighting for your business. That's the truth. Hot tubs started under $3,500. The big swim spas, they started under $17,000. And if you mention us, you get a free cover lift with your spa purchase. All you got to do is get there, see Billy C. Lindsay, I-40 and Witten Road, and make sure you tell them we sent you. You get something extra special every time you do that when you go into Family Leisure. Last night in Atlanta, not in Madison Square Garden, the biggest beatdown I've ever seen, particularly in an elimination game. The Knicks beat the Hawks by 51. The halftime deficit of 47 was the biggest in playoff history. Were you surprised at that, Andy Schiffman?
Look, Dave, I was very surprised. I thought Atlanta, who I actually think has played really, really well since the trade deadline, since moving Trae Young, thought they'd be a little more competitive, and they were competitive earlier in the series when they tied it up 2-2. And actually, I think, if I remember correctly, they went back to Atlanta after the 2 in New York, and they actually had, it was a 1-1 series at that point. So kudos to the Knicks. That was, as you said, quite a beatdown. I think they were up like 50 at halftime, and they just did not let up. They went on this like 39-4 run or something like that. The Knicks only gave up 15 points in the first quarter, which is pretty incredible given it's playoff basketball, and the Hawks are fully healthy. So, look, there's no other word for it in Atlanta than embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, quitting. They were up 11-8. Now, there was some 35-4 run or something crazy like that. And then they just, they stopped playing.
Yeah. I mean, you had OG Anunoby. It was a huge game.
Yeah.
He was plus 42, 29 points. Obviously,
Wow.
Mikal Bridges. What's great, though, for the Knicks is now looking ahead, they're going to play the winner of the Boston-Philly series, which surprisingly is now going to a Game 7.
Right.
But what last night did, obviously, they're going to have a little bit of additional rest now to see who wins that Boston-Philly series. But you also were now able to give guys like Jalen Brunson and Cat and some of these other starters additional rest going into the next series, which is always advantageous.
Since you mentioned that, Boston and Philly, I want to say the last 7 times they've played in the playoffs, Boston has beaten Philly. And Boston had a big lead in this. Now, it is going back to Boston, but I am shocked that there is going to be a Game 7. And, it almost makes me think the way Philly's played the last 2 games, maybe they got something going here.
They might. Look, I mean, Tyrese Maxey was an absolute stud last night. Embiid, just his presence out there. He had a good game. He was 6 for 18 shooting, 19 and 10. But just his presence on the court really impacts Philadelphia. And if you're getting productivity and perimeter shooting from guys like Oubre, obviously if you're going to have a great game from Paul George like they did last night, the unsuspecting peripheral cast, supporting cast there from Philly, they have absolutely every shot in the world to go and win a Game 7 in Boston. I think they were really, really good defensively last night. Really, besides Boston's big 2, Brown and Tatum, there really wasn't anyone else that really hurt him. And Peyton Pritchard was very active. They didn't shoot the ball well for a guy who's usually a pretty lethal perimeter shooter.
Yeah, he was
and
awful.
Tatum's got a little bit of, calf soreness, I read this morning. So we'll see how that impacts him in Game 7. But I actually think this Game 7 is going to be very competitive. I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say it's a no-brainer. Boston's going to win. I think Philly could really contend and compete in this Game 7.
Is the biggest surprise, though, Detroit and Orlando? That's a 1 and an 8, and Orlando is at home tonight. and the Pistons are facing elimination. If Orlando's going to win this series, probably tonight would be the night.
Tonight would be the night. And look, I was never a believer in the Pistons, even since they did hold the number one spot in the East all season, Dave. From the beginning, just watching them. I just, I have a few players on the team already, so I'm paying attention that much more diligently than other teams around the league. And I just never bought in to them really going that far in the playoffs. They're really good defensively, but they have too many stretches where they struggle offensively. They cannot score the ball. They do not have great shooters like some of these other, like the Knicks. I mean, I feel like players 1 through 5 on the roster can go out there and each of them are capable of going out for 3 or 4 threes a game. You don't have that in Detroit, and now it's catching up to them. Now we'll see what happens tonight in Orlando, but I would give the edge to Orlando. But in some world, Dave, where Detroit can muster up great play and Cade Cunningham can lead them and they ended up winning this series, I still think they lose in the next series. Going into the playoffs, I thought they weren't going to get out of the second round. I did not think they would fail in the first round, though.
Well, they would play Cleveland or Toronto, both those teams.
Yeah,
and
both
most
the teams
likely
playing really well.
Yeah, but I think both those teams are beatable.
Yes, but I think that both of them could have beaten Detroit.
I think Cleveland ends up winning this series.
Yep.
This is another one of those 3-2 in Toronto tonight. Cleveland is favored. If Cleveland wins this game, obviously they're in. Toronto's in one of those must-win situations. Here's the other interesting game tonight. Houston and the Lakers.
Yep.
First off, surprising that the Lakers, of course, KD really only played in one game, that it's 3-0. I've heard some people say it's a better matchup for Houston without KD because it's a defensive series, and that is not his strength. He's the most important guy on the team in most series. Maybe not in this one. He's not playing tonight. I'm pulling hard for Houston because no team has ever trailed 3-0 and won an NBA playoff series. If Houston wins tonight, the pressure's on LA for Game 7.
Oh, absolutely. It is pretty amazing that they did squeak one out the other night. Still no Durant, and you had the welcoming back of Austin Reeves in that game the other night, and Houston still won by 6. But, look, this one, I'm going to give the edge to the Lakers. I know they're on the road. I think Houston's going to bring everything they have, but I just think without Durant, they don't have enough firepower to overcome the Lakers. And now you've got Austin Reeves kind of worked back into the mix. Obviously, you still have LeBron, who's the king of the playoffs in today's NBA. I think the Lakers are going to close it out tonight.
Well, maybe. I'm going to let my heart get in front of me. I think Houston's figured something out here. And it would be, if there's a debate about...
We always want a Game 7, so let's hope Houston...
Yeah, well, and if there's a debate about GOATs between LeBron and Michael Jordan, if this is the only 3-0 team to lose a playoff series...
Yes, true, very true.
Tilts toward my man.
That'd be pretty embarrassing.
MJ.
They're going to sit there and say, well, we didn't have Luka, and we were fatigued
Of course they would.
and older.
Right.
All sorts of excuses, if you're a Lakers fan.
Last night, the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic getting eliminated. It dawned on me. They won a championship with Michael Malone, and then they got mad the year later and fired him. Now he's the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels, which is pretty amazing in its own right. But they have never been the same since then. They have not been in a championship mode. Firing Malone, did that hurt them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when that all went down last year, it was derivative of some sort of turmoil and disagreement between ownership and Mike Malone and their former GM Calvin Booth, and they were getting into some sort of tiffs and arguments. And ultimately, the two leaders of the organization both lost their job over it. And it's a shame because look at the success they had. They really haven't changed the team and the roster makeup that drastically between when Mike Malone was coaching to now when Adelman's taken over. And look, I don't really know what you can point to, but it is pretty disappointing to see the Nuggets, who's actually a team that I favored in the playoffs. I thought going into it, they could have competed for at least the Western Conference Finals. Maybe not made it all the way to the finals with OKC and San Antonio in the mix, but I think they would have gotten out of the first round and, potentially see what happens in the second round, especially with Jokic. But to lose on the road to Minnesota, who didn't have Anthony Edwards, who could be out for a little bit.
Or the shooter, DiVincenzo,
who can hurt you,
they were hurting, and another player had a hurt ankle, wasn't 100%. I just cannot believe it. And here's the other aspect that I got to ask you about. Jokic is probably going to sign or complete his deal for $122 million over the next 2 years. He can sign an extension.
Yep.
For 4 years, $293 million. If I do my math correctly, and I think I did, over the next 6 years, and we'll know if he does that this summer, over the next 6 years, he will be $5 million shy of making $420 million. He'll make $415. That is $5 million shy of $70 million a year for the next 6 years. That is astonishing money.
It is, and that takes him closer to $1 billion for his career if you add up all of his contracts as a Supermax player. And he's, 32, 33? Now, again, you got to do it if you're Denver, but I just wonder, you factor in where he's going to be from a health perspective in the next 4 years or so. There's already been some injury history recently. But again, you have to give him that amount of money. He's worth it in today's NBA. And that's what you're going to see.
He comes to play
some of these superstars.
every night, too. I mean, this is a guy never is just going through the motions.
I just think for a guy like that, playing 40-plus minutes a night, overtime, especially in the playoffs, eventually it will catch up to him. Now, he's not the most athletic guy.
Right.
So he uses his brains and his basketball IQ more than, like, the quick-twitch athleticism that you see in other players, like a Tyrese Halliburton, like a Jason Tatum. You've seen what happened there with those injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, Jokic tends to avoid those sort of injuries because I don't think it's the same sort of it's physicality.
I think with that kind of game, you can last longer.
Yep. We have Joe Ingles, who's going to play until he's 59 years old for that reason.
You hope.
Yeah.
All right, so Minnesota and San Antonio are in. Who wins that series?
I think San Antonio still. I think for sure San Antonio. I think now it's a different. It's a different matchup. I think that Minnesota had a lot of momentum, and Denver just kind of folded, right? But now you're Minnesota. You're going into play one of the top teams in the NBA. No Anthony Edwards. I think this series could be over in 5 games.
Last thing, real quick. You're the agent, your group, of Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr's making it fairly clear. I don't think he's coming back, but can you tell us definitively what you think he does? Does he go to another team? Does he become a broadcaster? Does he go to Cancun? What's he going to do?
Cancun sounds nice. I can't really tell you, Dave. That's a whole separate department of our agency. I know Steve. I stay in touch with him, but I'm not involved in that decision.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you, Andy. Well, I had to try. Thank you, my friend. As always, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you next Friday.
All right, thanks, Dave.
That is our man in Chicago, Andy Schiffman. He is brought to you by Miramichi. I'll be there Sunday. I go play golf just to test all of this out for you. Last time I was there, the greens were amazing. They were the fastest I've ever seen this early. Always so true. If you hit the right shot, those greens hold. I promise you. And, of course, there's the beauty and there's the practice facilities. There is the wonderful clubhouse with all the food and beverages that you could possibly want, but also up on top of the little party deck there, on top of 9 and 18, the best view in all of Shelby County. You cannot believe how good it is. And I got to remind everybody, Miramichi's not in Millington. It's in Woodstock. It's 25 minutes from my driveway in East Memphis. Go get the best total golf experience. Go and practice and see all the folks at Miramichi. We take a quick timeout. When we come back, we're going downtown. Our friend Jonah Dillon from the Commercial Appeal on a whole lot of Tiger stuff. That comes your way in a minute.
Did you miss your favorite Sports 56 show? No! Check out the podcast, broken down hourly at sports56whbq.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to like and subscribe. Never miss any Sports 56 show again with our podcasts available daily from Sports 56 and 98.5 FM.
This Mother's Day, the perfect gift is from Gould's. Choose the Mom's Escape package, which includes a shampoo and blowout with style, signature facial, relaxation massage, and a free Babor face serum while supplies last. Or buy Mom a $100 gift card and get $10 off. Offers good through May 10th at any Gould's location. Gould's is always the perfect gift for Mother's Day, with salon and spa services as well as the best hair and skincare products. Gould's Salon Spa, a legacy of style, care, and community since 1932. Happy Mother's Day from Gould's.
Hi, this is Troy Fiveash, owner of Fiveash Roof Services. I wanted to take a minute and discuss advertising with you. There are so many websites that list the best service provider in your area. Even the BBB has an accredited list. You know the one thing they all have in common? A company like mine has to pay to get on that list. So that begs the question, can those lists be trusted? You know what can be trusted? History. We've been around for almost 30 years providing customers with the best service and the best products that we possibly can. So if you need a roof, siding, or gutters, give us a call. We'll come talk to you and let you decide for yourself whether or not we know what we're talking about. Fiveash Roof Services. Best products, best warranties, and in many cases, the best price. We're fair, honest, and ethical. 367-0050 or MemphisRoofer.com. 367-0050 or MemphisRoofer.com.
Fiveash Roofing, it's what we do. We're here for you.
Mercedes-Benz Van Center Memphis has serious vans for serious work. At 4430 American Way, they are the Mid-South source for cargo, passenger, crew vans, and custom chassis. Need one or a full fleet? New or used, they've got it. With fleet solutions and custom upfits. Certified techs keep you moving with fast maintenance, repairs, and a large parts inventory. Mercedes-Benz Van Center is your Sprinter Van headquarters. 901-237-9302 or sprintervans.com. Mercedes-Benz Van Center Memphis, part of the Tag Truck Center family. Driven to keep you on the road.
Tito's Handmade Vodka is America's favorite vodka for a reason. From the first legal distillery in Texas, Tito's is 6 times distilled till it's just right and naturally gluten-free, making it a high-quality spirit that mixes with just about anything. From the smoothest martinis to the best Bloody Marys, Tito's is known for giving back, teaming up with nonprofits to serve its communities and do good for dogs. Make your next cocktail with Tito's. Distilled and bottled by 5th Generation Incorporated, Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly.
Now back to Wolo and Friends on Sports 56. Here once again is the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
Hey, maybe some man will take things over. Hey, let's him loose, hard to swallow.
We welcome you back here into the Family Leisure Studios. Time for a guy, I call him the Cadillac football beat writer from the Commercial Appeal, Landers Cadillac to be exact. But I call him that, and to prove that branding, just read his story on the U of M football depth chart. I don't know how you got that, Jonah Dillon, but it's impressive for sure. And you've got Stokes as the winner in the clubhouse here, or the leader in the clubhouse, I should say, for the Tigers quarterback position. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy. It's the leader in the clubhouse, which means that it's not over yet.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's important. I mean, obviously they went through spring practice, but a lot of spring practice for Memphis was just kind of getting to know guys, right? Because there's so many new players on this roster. The majority of the roster is transfers, and obviously a new coaching staff and a new head coach in Charles Huff. And so a lot of the depth chart stuff is kind of just working it out and seeing where people are. I think when they get into the summer, there's going to be more specific position battles and more, okay, who's going to play this role, who's going to play that role. And so that's why I kind of temper it. There's a projection of the depth chart, but that by no means does that mean that we're talking about this is definitely what it's going to be when they get to UNLV at the end of August.
We'll temper this thing too at running back because again, its leader in the clubhouse might be, but it was surprising to me because you got Manny Covey. We saw him in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, what he could do for Cincinnati Power 4. We know what Dallin Hayden can do. He's played at Ohio State and Colorado. And yet you've got this kid who will be a sophomore. He came from Southern Miss, Jalen Carter as the number 1 running back.
Yeah, I think Jalen Carter is someone who they really like. Obviously, he came from Southern Miss, and he played not a huge role, but he played enough that they're excited about what he can do. And obviously, a lot of players coming from Southern Miss with Charles Huff. I think Jalen Carter is a legitimate breakout candidate for Memphis. Obviously, we know the kind of lineage of Memphis running backs. It's a really important position. Jalen Carter talked about that earlier this spring, and I think he's someone who could play a much bigger role than he did last year. At the same time, I think, obviously, you need multiple running backs, right? At least 3, I would say, and those 3 guys, I think, will all play significant roles. It's just a matter of how those carries kind of break down. I think you mentioned Manny Covey, obviously someone who will be involved on punt returns, who can get the ball, catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think there's there's some versatility there. There's some different roles that those guys can play. But I do think Jalen Carter is someone to definitely keep an eye on.
Well, I would say this. Over the last few years, Memphis has had deep running back rooms. Really, I'm going all the way back to the beginning of the Norvell era. But if this kid's as good to beat out those two Power 4 guys, that says to me this is a really deep running back room.
Yeah, I think it is. And like I said, I mean, you need multiple guys, right? You're not going to ideally, most teams, I guess Memphis kind of did it a couple years ago with Mario Anderson because of injuries, but you don't really want to have a guy who's getting 25 carries a game, right? Because that's just not, especially in the fast offense that Memphis is going to run. You're going to need multiple guys. You're going to need guys who can catch the ball at the backfield. That's going to be really important. And so I think it's one of those things where we're going to kind of get a sense after the first couple of games of what it looks like. Because, like I said, I think everyone's going to play. And then we'll see, and the coaches will see too, who's playing the best, who makes the most sense in these roles, and how deep really is that running back room.
Well, the next thing up is nobody is going to be successful in the running back room or the quarterback room without an O-line. I was intrigued. You got Riley McGee, Parker Mitchell, Kobe Keenum, Martin Woodsma, and Aaron Karras as your starting offensive linemen. The majority of those come from Southern Miss, do they not?
For those guys, no. They're coming from a bunch of different places.
Oh.
I'd say the Southern Miss stuff mostly, we obviously talked about Jalen Carter, Tyshawn Chapman, who's a receiver, I think will play a significant role. Most of the Southern Miss guys besides that, who I think are going to be starters, are on the defensive side of the ball.
Huh.
And that has to do with who had eligibility left, who had played, and obviously some guys stayed at Southern Miss. Blake Anderson, who was their offensive coordinator last year, is now their head coach. So the offensive line is one of those where you're bringing in a ton of transfers. Obviously, chemistry is really important, and I think they spent a lot of the spring, Charles Huff even talked about it, putting guys in different roles, seeing what they had, and trying to figure it out. And so that's one where I definitely don't think it's set in stone. I think there's still position battles definitely up for grabs, even guys who have moved around to different types of positions on the offensive line throughout spring, and then we'll see how it comes together ahead of the season.
So is there a guy that really impresses you in those first five?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think you look at Woodsman, he's a starter. I mean, basically, if you're talking about the offensive line, and we see this all the time, Riley McGee as well has been the starter. And if you can start and show that you can do something at a certain level as an offensive lineman, there's always going to be a market for you in this day and age of college football because it's so important to have that experience. And so it is impressive when you look at the offensive line that they were able to bring in transfers who are starters and played significant football because obviously you want to recruit the best players and stuff like that. But when you can take a guy who you've said, I've seen you do this, and I know that you can do it at a high level, that's really important when you get into this. And that's why you see so much transfer movement, I think, with offensive linemen. Even the guys that Memphis has had over the past couple of years, a lot of guys transfer out because once they see that you're a high-level player and you can do it, then the market for you kind of balloons.
Yeah, and I'm suspecting he spent some money, NIL money, on this offensive line. You mentioned defense, which I know for sure. At linebacker, they got the stud Mike Montgomery. I know in the defensive backfield, they got Ian Foster. Everybody's really high on those two guys for sure. Tell me about up front, the defensive line.
Yeah, Jamon Tapp is the guy up front to know. He's a first-team All-Sunbelt guy, came from Southern Miss along with the two guys you just mentioned, and that kind of gives them, you look at the defense, you got a building block at all three levels, and those guys are all Sunbelt guys last year at Southern Miss, and obviously know what Charles Huff wants in this system. So I think those guys are super important in terms of what they're doing. Defensive line is going to be really important within this scheme, with the 4-2-5 scheme. You're going to need a lot of bodies. And so we look at the depth chart, and there's guys who probably aren't even listed on there right now who are going to play because they're going to be rotating a lot of guys in and out. I think that's going to be a really important position group for this team because they're hoping they can get pressure on the quarterback and really set the tone up front.
If I asked you straight out which is the better room, defense or offense, what would be your response?
Interesting. I'd probably have to go with defense just because I think there's more of a proven commodity there. Like I said, those guys defensively, I mean, we've seen them play at a high level, and they've done it. And those, again, all conference guys at every level, and there's a lot of other talent in that room as well across the defense. Offense, I think the talent is there. The proven production, not so much, especially, at receiver, it's kind of like, okay, there's some guys who have played football and have shown flashes, but there's not a lot of consistent production. There's not a 1,000-yard receiver, those types of players. I think on defense you have those types of players. Obviously, it all matters how the scheme comes together and everything like that. And I think the ceiling for the offense is really high because of Kevin Decker, because of the quarterbacks, because of the way that they've recruited guys. But I think in terms of what you could bank on, the defense feels like they've got a lot of proven production right now.
All right, the big news out of the University of Memphis today is really not football. It's the construction of this basketball team, and they got their scorer. Some people say he's David Jones-like in Tylik Weeks today. He averaged almost 20 points a game at Southern Miss. They say Jones-like, as I mentioned, and they beat some schools. We're talking Miami. We're talking Ole Miss, Baylor, TCU, South Carolina, UCLA. A lot of people really were in on this Tyler Weeks thing. What's your sense of him and the different way that I think Penny has gone about constructing this roster this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, we continue to. It's funny, we just spent all that time talking about Southern Miss, and now we talk about Southern Miss again.
Yeah, right.
So Jason Munz is
Southern
happy.
Miss
He's
North.
obviously.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Weeks is look. You talked about the roster construction, right? And so you need a scorer of that level, and it feels like the roster construction was waiting for somebody like this, right? And it makes sense now. It's hard when you do this, where you're trying to you're bringing in players, and you're hoping that they fit certain pieces, and then they don't, and that's obviously what happened last season. This is someone who's, like you said, I mean, the top scorer in the Sun Belt, almost 20 points a game. So you can bring him in and say, look, we have this proven commodity, right? You don't know how it's gonna work at this level, if he's going to play a different role. Obviously, they're going to play pretty high-level competition in the non-conference, so how is that going to go? But now you can kind of slot him in and say, okay, we've got pieces, which they do already, to put around somebody who can be our leading scorer and can be that type of a player. I think they were missing that last season. And, we go back to a couple months ago, just looking at the end of the season and thinking about roster construction, and this is one of the things that they needed. They needed a proven high-level scorer, and so now they have it, and now you can continue to kind of put the finishing touches on this roster, knowing you're building around something that really makes sense as a key ingredient and a top scorer.
I believe if I do my math correctly, that's 13 positions filled. That means two could be – no, that's 12. That's 12 in the books. So you got 3 left, knowing Penny likes to keep one for a move in the middle of next year, so he's got to sign 2. He's got to sign 2 bigs. Williams is the one key because I know they're really high on him, and then there's another dark horse. I'm not sure it's that JC kid or somebody that we don't know about.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, you look at the roster right now, and it seems like there's a lot there, but there's not a lot in the front court, right? You need big men, and we know how important that position is, right? We know, I mean, you just think about a couple of years ago, one of the reasons they had so much success, you brought in Dan Danger and you brought in Moses Cisse. Like, having those 2 guys was huge for that team, in addition to obviously everything else. And this roster now has a ton of wings, it has a ton of guards, and it looks like it has a ton of scoring. But obviously you need that big man presence inside, you need that rebounding. And so you look at the rest of the roster, and like you said, that's clearly the major need right now, and that's going to be ultimately the next however long it takes in terms of recruitment. He's going to have to fill those positions, and we'll see what he does.
Well, the other aspect is I know this team could score. I'm not sure how they defend, but we will see that, and Penny will talk about that, I'm sure, at some point as this team continues to be put together. Jonah, we'll talk more about this and a whole lot more, maybe even the NBA draft as that gets closer, and we'll talk again next Friday.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's Jonah Dillon from The Commercial Appeal. He is brought to you by Shell Dunn. We got the NFL draft we just saw. Got to have a quarterback. We're watching the NBA playoffs. What would the Knicks be without Burleson, huh? All these teams. What would they be without their point guards? I can tell you, they'd be in trouble. And that's the perfect thing about Sheldon Rosengarten. He's the perfect quarterback. He's the perfect point guard because he knows the plan. That's the strategic marketing that he's been doing for years. He's got that strategy, but he works his plan. He knows how to execute the strategy. And man, is he a worker. He works 24/7, 365. As soon as you commit to him, he commits to you. And he'll tell you, talk to 2 or 3 real estate brokers, just make sure that he is one of them. Then he'll tell you about his strategy, and you're off and running to get to the closing table for the best price. Just call him at 483-0546 or go to MemphisRelocate.com. That is the week in the books. We'll be back bright and early Monday. Johnny Radio's right around the corner. Have a great weekend, everybody.